Officer Ganning, during his night shift, decided to stop by a small diner to grab a cup of coffee. However, he was met with a cold reception. The owner of the establishment refused to serve him. The man had been watching a news report about a recent incident where police officers had killed a black man. Outraged that the officers had gone unpunished, the owner warned Ganning to be cautious that night, as the locals were in no mood to welcome police officers. After leaving the diner, Ganning noticed a van with no license plates and a broken taillight. He reported the vehicle to dispatch and signaled the driver to pull over. Behind the wheel was a calm-looking woman. However, when Ganning peered into the van, he noticed a bloody cloth, which raised his suspicions. He ordered the woman to step out of the vehicle, but before he could proceed, an invisible force suddenly threw him aside, like a ragdoll. 12 hours earlier, Renee Lamito was preparing to return to the police force after a long leave of absence. She had endured a devastating personal tragedy. Her son had drowned in a swimming pool. The loss left a deep emotional scar, and during one shift, overwhelmed by grief, Renee struck a civilian in the face. As a result, she was required to attend therapy to cope with her trauma and anger. Now back on duty, Renee was assigned to mentor rookie officer, Denny Hollage, helping him acclimate to the job and teaching him the basics of the profession. During a routine patrol, Renee and Denny spotted a child sitting in the middle of the road. They stopped to check if the child was alright, but before they could ask any questions, a group of aggressive locals rushed over and forced the officers to leave. It turned out the boy was simply playing on the road at night, and the residents were unbothered by his presence. Not long after, the partners received a report about Officer Ganning's disappearance. Arriving at the location where he was last heard from, they found his wrecked patrol car. The hood was smeared with blood, and they spotted what appeared to be human teeth, suggesting something horrific had occurred. Renee checked Ganning's laptop and found a video recorded by the vehicle's dashcam. The footage showed a woman standing motionless in front of the car, while an invisible force violently flung the officer into the air. At the end of the recording, the woman pointed toward an empty lot. Following the clue, Renee went to the lot and discovered Ganning's mutilated body. When other officers arrived, she tried to tell them what she had seen in the video. However, no one believed her, as the dashcam recording had mysteriously disappeared, along with footage from Ganning's body camera. All the evidence that could have corroborated her story seemed to vanish into thin air. Returning home, Renee couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Her thoughts consumed her to the point that she had a strange dream. In it, she saw how Officer Ganning was killed and got a clearer look at the woman he had tried to detain. On her pants, she noticed a logo belonging to a hospital Renee had visited in the past. Determined to investigate further, Renee woke up and decided to delve into her dream. She searched for the hospital logo and visited its website, where she found a photo of the same woman. Her name was Tanisha Brantz, and she had recently left her job at the hospital. However, her current whereabouts were unknown. After obtaining Tanisha's last known address, Renee went there with her partner Denny. While Denny was reluctant about the idea, he didn't argue. At the house, they found it appeared abandoned, and it seemed the owner hadn't been there for a long time. However, they heard a strange noise from inside and decided to investigate. Renee found an open door and stepped into one of the rooms, where she discovered a photograph of Tanisha's son, who, as she learned, had died some time ago. Meanwhile, Denny searched another part of the house and stumbled upon a drawer. When he opened it, dozens of cockroaches spilled out and swarmed him. Realizing the house was unsafe, Denny quickly retreated outside. At that moment, Renee encountered something inexplicable. A sinister shadow was advancing toward her from the hallway. Terrified, she struggled to open the door to escape, but in the end, she had to break a window to get out. Back at home, Renee conducted her own investigation. She discovered that Tanisha's 14-year-old son, DeMarco, had been killed. This tragedy happened a year ago, and it seemed the woman still hadn't come to terms with the loss. Meanwhile, Tanisha went to a store where two street thugs noticed her. They decided to harass the strange woman and started causing trouble. Around the same time, Tanisha's van, parked nearby, caught the attention of passing police officers. The cops entered the store, which turned out to be their fatal mistake. One of the thugs took Tanisha hostage and shot one of the officer's partners. However, the thug soon became a victim himself. The same mysterious shadow that Renee had seen earlier in Tanisha's house appeared and killed the man. It then attacked everyone else inside the store. When Renee and Denny arrived at the scene, they found only bodies. Renee went straight to the security room, where she again encountered a supernatural presence. Surveillance cameras briefly showed footage of the incident, but then everything vanished. Renee noticed a phone left behind by one of the thugs, and took it before it could be collected as evidence. Continuing her investigation, Renee discovered that Tanisha's son, DeMarco, was a deaf boy who was loved by everyone. He often helped others, but he had been killed in a shootout at a parking lot. At the funeral of one of the murder officers, Renee noticed Denny arguing with a colleague named Darlo. She approached them and questioned Darlo about DeMarco's death. Darlo admitted that the boy's body had been found on the lot a year ago, but no one could determine who was responsible. The following night, Renee had another nightmare. She saw her son, surrounded by an eerie blue light. He stood in the middle of the street, as if trying to tell her something, but then he screamed. Waking up in a cold sweat, Renee realized she needed to return to the investigation. Her colleagues informed her that Tanisha's van had been reported stolen from a church. Renee traced the van's register owner and went to speak with the priest. The priest confessed that he had lent the van to Tanisha, but she never returned it. He explained that DeMarco had been a kind-hearted boy who helped everyone in the community. However, after his death, strange events began to unfold, with police officers starting to die. The priest provided Renee with the address where Tanisha might now be living. Renee went to an old factory where she found Tanisha's belongings. Among them was a box containing photographs of the murdered police officers. To her horror, Renee saw a picture of herself among them. Looking around, she noticed a surveillance camera on the ceiling and realized she was being watched. When Tanisha saw Renee, she left the building. Renee tried to contact Sergeant Casper, but he didn't respond. She then called Denny to share her concerns. Renee warned him that Tanisha might be targeting him, as his photo was also among her things. Scared, Denny decided to leave and left behind a note along with a flash drive containing a video from the dashcam. When Denny didn't show up at the factory, Renee went to his home. There she found his lifeless body and the note. Watching the contents of the flash drive, Renee finally understood why her partner had taken his own life. A year earlier, Denny had participated in the apprehension of a suspected criminal alongside other officers, including Ganning. The suspect, a deaf boy named DeMarco Brantz, had been ordered to stop, but he didn't comply because he couldn't hear the command. The police opened fire, and when the boy fell, they discovered he posed no threat. Realizing their mistake, the officers decided to cover it up. Instead of admitting their guilt, they executed the wounded boy, erased dashcam footage, and blamed the killing on unknown gang members. Denny had opposed this decision, but they pressured him to stay silent, threatening severe consequences if he didn't comply. When Denny realized Renee was investigating Darlo, one of the officers involved, he feared the truth would come out and couldn't handle the pressure any longer. After reviewing the video footage, Renee returned to the factory, where Sergeant Casper was already waiting for her. She trusted him and was planning to reveal the full truth about the events of the past year. However, it turned out that Casper was in collusion with Darlo and other officers. Darlo pointed a gun at her, demanding she hand over the flash drive. When Renee refused, he shot her in the stomach, but her bulletproof vest saved her. Darlo threatened that the next bullet would be fatal, but he didn't get the chance to act. At that moment, Tanisha Brantz appeared with the spirit of her son. DeMarco, who was killing the officers responsible for his death, also tried to protect his mother. If she was in danger, he stepped in to defend her. His first victim was Casper, whom he gravely injured. The shadow of the teenager then turned its attention to Darlo, pursuing him. Tanisha warned Renee to leave, as she could not control her son, but Lamido decided to intervene. She went after Darlo and confronted him at the most critical moment. Darlo shot DeMarco, and his spirit briefly disappeared, but Renee wounded Darlo, immobilizing him. Then DeMarco returned and brutally dealt with the officer. Afterward, the boy's spirit turned toward Renee, but Tanisha reassured her, saying her son wouldn't harm her. And she was right. DeMarco left Renee alone and vanished. Tanisha, realizing that her son's spirit would no longer pose a threat to anyone, thanked Renee for her help. Together they left the factory as police and medics arrived. Sergeant Casper survived the attack and was taken to the hospital. While Tanisha and Renee were being tended to, they noticed the appearances of their son's spirit standing nearby. The boys silently watched their mothers, as if to let them know they could now protect them, even after death. As the officers passed by, the boys' spirits disappeared. Renee realized her son had found peace and finally stopped grieving his loss. Tanisha also felt reassured that DeMarco's soul had found solace. After the deaths of the corrupt officers, over time, Tanisha returned to her job at the hospital, where she was appreciated for her kindness and professionalism. Renee, on the other hand, initiated legal proceedings to hold Casper accountable. During the trial, numerous facts came to light, exposing corruption within the police force. Thanks to Denny's flash drive, which preserved the footage from that fateful night, Casper's guilt in covering up the crime was proven. The jury found him guilty, and he was convicted for his involvement in the conspiracy. After the trial, Renee returned to duty. While patrolling the streets, she felt confident that she could now serve with a clear conscience, and the community she protected could sleep peacefully. This is where the film ends. Share in the comments if you enjoy it, and thank you so much for watching until the end.